because this whole thing is about freedom. So, and I guess it just, for us, it means we kind of had to redefine, what success is. I mean, some people are going to say success is you write a book, it becomes a bestseller. You have 150 speaking engagements a year. You have, 100 consulting clients, but that's not what I'm looking for. Ready to roll.
Here we go. This is the Living Numbers Podcast, where everyone is interesting if you ask the right questions. Today, I have a wonderful guest who has an amazing, unique story that has the origins are even better. So let's jump in. Hailing from, I think this is right, he'll correct me if I'm wrong later, Leesport, Pennsylvania, where he founded and ran a nonprofit youth sports organization for over 30 years. Talk about dedication. Called the Berkshire Baseball and Softball Club, which later became Big Vision Foundation. I think that hits hard. That's a great name. In 2019, he and his wife felt a calling from God. Definitely understand that. To leave everything that they had known, to sell most of their prized possessions, and to live life in an RV, traveling across the US and doing so many other things, much like his amazing mother did before him. Boston Red Sox fan, hence the dog's name, Euclid, author, blogger, podcast host, speaker, and consultant. I present the Nomad, believer, and mama's boy, respectfully and honorably. I present the Dan Clouser. Say hello to the people, Dan.
Hello, and thank you for having me on the show, Tony. Really looking forward to the conversation.
I'm glad you came on. And when I started to read your story, I just couldn't resist sending you that message. Hey, man, we definitely gotta collaborate. We got to do something special here. And so I think it all starts with your mom, who had, please remind me again, I have the number, the 1967.
Yep, 1967 Plymouth Valiant.
Yep, and that's it. That's the one. And please, just go ahead and tell the story. Your mom did a lot of amazing things, and it really coincides with the amazing story that you have now created. So go ahead, take it away.
You bet. So yeah, a lot of what I'm doing now stems from inspiration from my mom. Like you said, she had an old 1967 Plymouth Valiant, and back in the mid 80s, she took the back seat out of it, put a sheet of plywood in there, put a mattress in the back, and just traveled around the country. And she would stop and visit friends and family. If she felt she was getting low on cash, she would stop a little bit and, work, whether it was waitressing or pumping gas or whatever. She volunteered a lot. She was always volunteering. I mean, she was doing that long before she started traveling. When she kind of stopped the full-time nomad thing, she was still doing quite a bit of traveling to volunteer, mostly through the Salvation Army, volunteering at hurricane relief efforts in Florida. The biggest, probably most impactful volunteer work she did was at Ground Zero after 9/11. The original plan was to be up there for about 3 months. And I think till it was all said and done, she was up there for about 6 or 9 months. And again, just did incredibly impactful work. And so when, I kind of felt a shift in my life, volunteering was going to be a big part of it. Again, just to honor her. So the most recent book that I've published is called The Journey of My Mother's Son. The name of my podcast is The Journey of My Mother's Son. So it really is, a lot to honor her legacy. I remember when she passed away, reading through her journals and stuff like that, and just, seeing the people that impacted her, letters that we got after she passed away from people that we had never even met, telling us about how much of an impact she made on their lives. So when
Wow.
Sandy and I decided that we wanted to start traveling, I wanted to document it, and I wanted to do it in real time through the blogging and the podcasting. And, because I really thought, man, if social media would have been around when Mom did this, like,
Man.
it would have been really cool, really cool. So that's really the main inspiration behind why we did it. But if you'd have asked me, even as recently as, 4 or 5 years ago, there's no way I would have said, yeah, we're going to do this someday. I mean, I always thought that's Mom's story, not my story. I love
Right.
telling people about what she did, very proud of what she did, but I never envisioned it, being my story. And then in 2019, in early 2019, I took 2 solo trips where I drove from Pennsylvania to Dallas,
Mhm.
Texas for the ABCA convention, the American Baseball Coaches Association convention.
Okay.
From there, I went to Louisiana to see some friends, and then back to Pennsylvania. A couple months later, a month and a half later, did the same thing down to Orlando. And it was the first time in my life that I really took my time and enjoyed the
Mm.
journey on a trip. And there was like this aha moment on those trips where it was like, wow, I think I just figured out why
Yep.
I did this, And then when I got home, I wrote like I hadn't written in years, and knocked out, 4 or 5 chapters in what seemed like no time. And that's when it kind of started to hit me that, what, maybe there's something more, really, some people kind of think it's crazy when I say this, but, like literally hearing a voice, like, hey, it's time for a new chapter.
Mm.
But I did not embrace it at first because we were doing some incredible work for our organization. And, I was like, nah, that's not my story. It's, that was my mom's story, not my story.
Mm.
And really kind of had an internal battle going on. Um, and, after a while, I kind of bought into it, and then
Mhm.
ran it by my wife, who thought I had completely lost my mind. But again, eventually, she came around. We started seeing, more and more things that just seemed like
Mm.
signs to us as to,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
right, it's time to close this chapter. We've done enough. And it's time to open a new chapter. But we honestly have no regrets at all on this decision.
I mean, there's so much there. Your mom sounds like a true real life folk hero, where there are all these stories and these people that you don't even know, and they come out the woodworks, when those people pass away, like even in stories and novels and movies, the first person I just thought of is Iron Man, right? So when Tony Stark passed away, like everybody came out, even the little kid he visited in Iron Man 2. But it just shows the impact that people have when they just kind of let go, and they just follow their heart, follow God, that voice in your head, right? We may attribute it to that, other people attribute it to something else, but oftentimes when you follow that, wherever you think it's coming from, it can lead to making an impact that does a lot of good, not just for you, but then for other people and generations on. And so you mentioned you and your wife have this RV, right? And our second number here is 1 square mile is 640 acres. And so we'll come back to acreage here in the later story, but tell the story of how you guys made that decision to go, all right, like what was the question that you had to answer for yourselves that kind of put you over the hump to then like go head first into it? Was there like a specific memory or like moment, like y'all were at the dinner table or y'all were out eating or y'all were with friends or something like that?
I think the specific moment for her was really she had been laid off from corporate America about a year
Mhm.
before this. was now working in a position for another company that was a temporary position. She was working for a temp service, but when she was first hired, she was told it would be, temp to permanent. And, initially it was like, it'll happen in 3 months, and then, well, no, it's going to happen in 6 months. At this point, she had been there, over a year and a half, and nothing was happening.
Yeah.
And, I think for her, that's what she kind of took as the sign as to, what, maybe this is something that, that we should do. And
Let's roll. Let's do it.
Yeah. And it was actually on a walk, it was our morning walk with our dog. For me, it was just, again, that inspiration to write after those 2 trips. And again, even I had, a battle going on.
Right. What were those questions in that battle? Sorry, but what were those questions? How did that interact? How did you interact with yourself in your mind when this battle is going on?
Just, that it was such powerful work. We knew that we were changing kids' lives. We dealt with a lot of inner city kids, giving kids opportunities that they never would have had otherwise. And really trying to, the organization was my baby. I started it in 1989. So to kind of, be willing to walk away from that was not an easy decision. And I just thought there was more work for me to do there. And, it was really like, God was saying to me, no, you've done enough. You've done enough. It's time to do something else. And, you figure I was, right around 50 years old when this was going on. And, 30 years of my life, 60% of my life I had dedicated to this organization. So that was the internal struggle for me. It was really just accepting that, that I could walk away. And that there was something more without really knowing for sure what that something was. We knew I was going to be able to do some consulting work, wanted to, do more speaking, wanted to publish more books, but didn't really know how it was all going to piece together. I had a lot of consulting things lined up, and then COVID hit, and that, all came to a screeching halt, which again was another thing where it was kind of like, well, wait, are we doing the right thing? And then it was just like, no, just keep moving forward. And it's, it really is a story of just having faith, and just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And, things have worked out for us incredibly well.
So what are some checkpoints along the way to where you go, okay, yep. All right. Yep. We did the right thing. And then, things happen. You go, okay, yep. All right. It kind of reinforced your belief in what you were doing.
One of the biggest ones has been being able to reconnect with some of my old players that are really scattered throughout the country. And it was really almost, a message, from God saying to me, look, the seeds you planted, they're blooming, they're blooming. Because a lot of times, as a youth coach, you don't always get to see the fruit of your labor. You put in a lot of hours, you're putting a lot into these kids. And, some of them you can see right there that they get it. Others, you think they don't get it. And then you later find out, wow, they really did. But you don't always get to see that. And for me to be able to get together with some of these guys and girls and see what they're doing in their lives today and the impact they're making, has really reiterated that we made, the right decision, and that, the 30 years of, blood, sweat, and tears that went into that organization were paying dividends. And it was, kind of like, seeing the ripple effects of throwing that stone in the pond and how far that reach was going. So that was definitely one. The other thing is, the more and more that we started to volunteer with different projects, we knew that volunteerism was going to be a part of this journey. Again, we didn't really know how it would come together, how we would find projects and that sort of stuff. Right out of the gate, we had an opportunity to volunteer in Texas and Louisiana. One at a faith-based drug and alcohol rehabilitation center, and another right after Hurricane Laura came through Louisiana. And, but after that, again, we didn't really know how we would find these opportunities to volunteer. And we came across an organization called A Year to Volunteer, and that has really been the thing that has truly given us purpose, because it's an RV centric volunteer organization that will find different projects across the country, whether it's at a state park or a nonprofit organization or county campground, whatever the case is, and put together this project and then offer it out to people to volunteer with. And that has really been a godsend for us, because we basically just have to sign up for the project and show up and
see what
work
happens.
our butts off for 2 weeks. Phil and Shar, who run the organization, take care of all the back end stuff. That if they hit hiccups, they never show it to us as volunteers. As far as we're concerned, it's running smooth as silk. So that's been
good management.
Really the other thing. Yeah, absolutely. And then the final thing is just, apart from the incredible beauty that this country has to offer, is the amazing people that we've met. And again, I get it. This country, this world is a mess at times. But I'll tell you what, Tony, if you're looking for good and you're looking for good people, you're going to find them. And that's been the most incredible part of this for us, is just the number of people that has really kind of restored our faith in humanity, of just good quality, salt to the earth people that we've come across and met. And, some we've become friends with, others, I don't even remember their name, but we've had, we had a very good conversation and they made a huge impact on me, and, they'll forever, leave an indelible mark on my life, and I think that's what's really cool about it. And, again, like I said, it's really allowed us to kind of, restore our faith in humanity and know that there are a lot of good people out there, and you just got to go out and find them.
I agree. It's about everything that we do is about the people. At least, let me speak for myself. What I do, it's about the people. So when I'm teaching, because I am a high school teacher, so I got kids from all kinds of backgrounds coming into my classes, and you kind of never know what you're going to get. And my class is only one semester. I teach speech, ironically. So I only have these kids for this very short window, but I see the ripples a little bit sooner when you see these kids as sophomores, as juniors, as seniors, and they're still coming by your class, even though they took you for 4 months, 4 years ago as a freshman. They still make time in their day to just come by and say hello, or just to see you in the hallway and a wave or a head nod. So it's all about the people. And so when I have people on and I'm reaching out and I'm messaging and I'm connecting, I'm like, there's so many amazing people who have amazing stories, much like yourself, like your mom. And I'm sure if I talk to your wife, her perspective will be a little bit different at the very least, but her story will be just as great. And all of these people that you meet on the road. So that's the whole reason I started this podcast, is to be able to connect with great people and to be able to share their stories. So you ran this complex for 30 years. That was 130 acres, which is our next number. And volunteering was a huge thing for you, but you grew it to something where you had to be hired on. If I remember correctly from another podcast, they go, hey, like, damn, this thing is growing and it's getting big. No better person than to have you come on. So talk about like that dynamic, how it changed from from volunteer to being hired. Because a lot of times we start things as hobbies and then they become our jobs, and now it's different. And then you mentioned some players before. I kind of want you to think about some of these ex-players that you may have had, baseball, softball, either one. I'm a softball coach too, ironically. And just talk about some of those kids that made an impact on you. So I know a two-part question there, but take one.
The first part, never in my wildest dreams, when I started the organization, did I ever think that it would turn into a vocation, that it would grow to what it did. And, I would have to, run it full time. So it was, when that opportunity came about, it was really, almost unbelievable, when it really comes down to it, is that, again, this little thing that we had started had grown, to this huge organization that, now needed, full-time staff. It was amazing. As far as how if I had changed, I don't think I really did, because it was always, whether as a volunteer or whether as a paid staff member, it was always about the kids for me. First and foremost, that was the only reason I was doing it. And our approach as an organization was really about teaching these kids life lessons through the game. So, we had very competitive teams over the years, so we were always stepping on the field to win, but that wasn't the number one goal. Number one goal was to make these kids good human beings, whether they went on to play college, whether they went on to play professionally. At some point, the game's going to pass you by. That the game is unforgiving in that matter. And at some point, you're just not going to be able to compete at whatever that level is. For some of us, it's high school. For some of us, it's college. Those who are better, they get into minor league ball. Those who are really good can make it to the big leagues. But at some point, we're all done. And nobody's going to care about what you did on the baseball field. When you're sitting in there and having a conversation to be part of a business organization, they could care less about, how well you could hit a curveball or how good you could throw a curveball. None of that matters. It's now, how are you going to help this business be successful? So the way I approached it, whether as a volunteer or as a paid staff member, never changed. Absolutely never changed. Toward the end of my tenure, there's a little 12-year-old player in our organization. His name was Juan Alfonseca. And, this kid just had such a great outlook on life. And I remember one time, we're running a tournament at the complex. And, in addition to the tournament, we've also got staff. Relatively common that on any given tournament weekend, one of these kids is going to call off. It was the nature of the beast of
yep.
we were dealing with. It's just what it was. So I think we had 2 call-offs that morning, and we ran a tight ship. So if somebody called off, it wasn't like, we had an excess amount of bodies that we could throw at this. I mean, it just made everyone else's day harder. So it's probably in a little bit of a foul mood at the time. And I was coming over, and his team was getting ready to warm up for their first game. And, I dropped something off with him, a bucket of balls or something at the batting cage. And I'm like, "Hey, Juan, how's it going?" And he just looked at me and he goes, "Well, coach, I woke up this morning, so it must be pretty good." And just stopped me in my tracks, where I'm like, this kid's got it figured out.
Yep.
This kid's got it figured out, so here he is, I'm thinking about all the bad things that I've got to deal with for the day. And he just stops me in my tracks and, teaches me a life lesson in that moment. And then, talking about, some of the notable players, so to speak, that came through our organization. Again, we had over 50 players that went on to play minor league baseball, which was always, something we were always very proud of. But, we've got kids out there that are, doctors and lawyers and entrepreneurs and, involved in their own communities and making an impact. And, there's just so many that I couldn't even begin to name all the ones that I'm proud of. But, when you're just talking, within the game itself, we had a kid that one kid that made it to the big leagues for a cup of coffee with the New York Mets, Zach Lutz. He later on then went and played in Japan and Korea for a little bit. And then as his career ended, he actually got into coaching. He would pull me aside and, we would just have conversations about coaching. And, again, you see, here's a kid who immediately, started to give back once he was done playing. So that was always special. Anytime I was able to have a conversation with him, before or after a game or whatever the case was. And the other two that, within the game have made it, pretty far as we got a kid, Gil Kim, who's the director of baseball operations for the Toronto Blue Jays. And,
right.
Again, just a kid who's, sharp as a whip and, smart, and definitely I think will someday actually be a big league general manager. And, another kid who's the assistant general manager for the Houston Astros right now, Andrew Ball.
Wow.
Just took that position back in December. And, again, to still be able to have relationships with those guys and, call them on the phone and, they pick up and they return my call is pretty cool. And again, to have those conversations and, them talking about, their time within our organization or having me as a coach, how much it impacted them and has helped them get to where they are today is pretty amazing. So, but I really, those are 4 quick ones off the top of my head but every kid I coached has had some sort of impact on me in one way, shape, or form.
As a coach, I definitely can relate. What did your players call you? Did they call you Coach Dan, Coach C? What was it?
It actually varied a little bit the years early on, because I started coaching really young. So I told them, just call me Dan, because it was awkward, honestly, be called coach, because I always kind of took that title as like just a title of, respect that I hadn't earned yet, So I was like, just call me Dan. And then it kind of, evolved where they would call me Coach Dan. And then a lot of times they just call me coach. But it's funny how I didn't embrace the title in my early years of coaching because again, I didn't feel as though I had earned that yet.
I have kids, players. It could be, Coach Franklin. It could be Coach Frank, Coach Frankie. I mean, it's Mr. Coach Frank. I mean, it could be just a myriad of things. And I think back to my dad, because it was just Mr. Franklin. There was no Mr. F, no Mr. Troy. It was just Mr. Franklin. Do not vary from that. It's not fun. It's my name. Right. To me, and I think I tried to do that, but it just wasn't me. I'm like, as long as you put the Mr. or the coach in front of it, then for the most part, I think we'll be fine, because that's my personality. And I think you got to kind of roll with what works for you. That kind of takes us into our next number here, and it's $5. So I got a little story. So I walk into, I order something from Amazon, and it's this place called Kohl's, retail department store. And you can return your Amazon packages there. So if you buy something, it's wrong or it's damaged, broken, whatever the case may be, you can take it to Kohl's, you can return it, and you can get your money back. But what they also do is they give you $5 in Kohl's cash, where now you can basically spend money in the store and get $5 off. Now, we all know $5 is not enough money to really buy anything, not these days. But it shows you how they're reinventing themselves and they're innovating to be able to stay relevant. So you've gone through a couple of different stages, 2 massive ones, with going from, leaving your job to becoming, full-time at the organization, and then leaving the organization to now become RVing across the country. These are 2 huge shifts. So you've also become an author, a podcaster, you do a ton of stuff now. So kind of talk about reinventing yourself and how you were able to think about and create these different, not just streams of income, but different ways to give back and make an impact as you made this huge shift to selling everything and becoming a nomad in your RV, you, your wife, and Euclid, of course.
I think we're constantly in a state of flux as human beings, so whether we know it or not, I think we're always kind of reinventing ourselves. If we're not, we're going backwards, because you're never really standing still. When we're looking at doing this, I wanted to be able to give back, and that was a big component of our organization. It was a big component of our life. So, that was a must for sure. The writing always was part of my life. So to be able to continue to publish books, documenting our travels, just telling the stories was a big deal, but then it's, figuring out how to sell those books.
Right.
Because you can write it, which is a task in itself, but then you also want to be able to sell them. And, I never, it's not like I really have aspirations to, to become a bestseller or, rich and famous. That's not, I just want to inspire other people. And if that's one person or if it's 100 people or 1,000 people, that's fine. I'm throwing it out there. With the speaking and consulting is, that continues to grow and try to get more and more of that stuff booked. It's being able to do it on our terms. Because I don't want it, I worked a lot of hours with the organization. I was putting in a ton of hours and I have no regrets because again, it was for kids. But I don't want to get into a situation where all we're doing is traveling from, one speaking engagement to another speaking engagement to, and having consulting take up all my time. So
it defeats the purpose of the whole thing.
Exactly. Because this whole thing is about freedom, and I guess for us, it means we kind of had to redefine, what success is. I mean, some people are going to say success is you write a book, it becomes a bestseller. You have 150 speaking engagements a year. You have, 100 consulting clients. But that's not what I'm looking for. I'm just looking to be able to inspire people, to tell our story and to make people understand you don't have to live the rat race that society tells us to live, and there's so many opportunities for people to do what we're doing and continue to work. There's so many opportunities for remote work out there. I connected with a young couple fresh out of college who they both work full-time remote jobs, but live in an RV. So they make sure they're in a campground from Monday to Friday, and they've got good Wi-Fi and a good connection, and then they travel on weekends. So for me, it's really about telling people that they can do whatever they want to do. They don't have to get caught up in all this stuff that society teaches us, to get caught up in. So I don't know if that really actually answered your question or not, but that's how we reinvented ourselves.
That definitely answers the question, and it pushes us into our next part right here, where I ask my 3 whats from every guest that I have on, and we can actually start with what's usually the last what. We can make it the first one because you already kind of started to jump into it, and it is, if I were to take this segment back to my classroom, what would you tell high school age kids?
I would tell them don't rush in to their next decision. And I know a lot of times, again, society says graduate high school, go to a 4-year school. There's a lot of debt, which then forces you, to get on that hamster wheel, So I would say take your time. I am a huge fan, and I'll probably end up re-answering this with a later question that we've talked about.
Hey, go ahead, go into it.
I am a huge fan of kids taking a gap year between their senior year of high school and their freshman year of college. The reason I say that is I think there's so much that can be learned in the world before you go back to school. And again, you don't know, man, at 18 years old, you don't know what you want to do for the next, 50 years of your life.
9 times out of 10.
Yeah. So, if it's possible, I would strongly encourage you to travel in that gap year. And again, you can do like my mom did. You can travel and stop and work somewhere a month or 2 months, or whatever the case is, and you're going to learn so much from that experience.
Yep.
It would be priceless, and then you have some more money to go on to your next little gig that you can go and do for, a week, 2 weeks, whatever it is. And I think just by experiencing that and experiencing people, and at a young age, again, where many times we're told to put all these people in a box, you can actually get out there and interact with people who aren't going to look like you, probably don't think exactly the way like you do. But if you actually take the time to have a conversation with them, you're going to find out you have a lot more in common with them than what people are going to tell you. So, not to get ahead of myself, but if there's something that would be an unpopular belief in today's society of mine, that's it. Take a gap year, travel, meet people, experience life a little bit, and then make the decision. Do I want to go to college? Is there another route? Is a trade school a better route? Is something else a better route than just a 4-year debt-laden school?
I've had other guests that would say the same exact thing, because guess what? The school is going to be there. They're going to take your money whenever you decide to go back to school, if you decide to go back to school. But there are so many other ways.
18, 19, 20, they'll take that check.
They'll take it no matter how old you are. And your mom figured this out. And I didn't understand this until my wife and we took our trip to China. And I worked teaching English. Is there are ways that you can work and travel. You can do both. So the unpopular opinion that's actually considered unpopular, I think, is kind of turning a little bit the other way now as inflation goes up and the price of school goes up. Hey, take that gap year. Take that gap year, go meet some people, go experience some things, and it'll broaden your perspective and teach you some things that you will not learn in college. Now, for our last what is, if you weren't traveling as a creator, author, counselor, if you weren't doing all these things and traveling in your RV, what would you be doing? Would it be back at the complex, big? Would it be back there? Would it be a different phase in life that you would have gone into?
If there's anything I miss, it is, that day-to-day interaction with my players and again, knowing you're making an impact. So I think it would definitely, revolve around coaching in one shape or form. Again, whether it's coaching a team, which I loved doing that. I mean, there were times where I, did some individual lessons here and there, but I never got the same out of that as I did out of a team. Because, when you take, 15 or 18 different personalities and, are able to get them meshed together and, pointed in the right direction and working for one common goal, that's a pretty special accomplishment. So it would be, definitely, coaching, baseball somewhere, maybe at a college or something like that, or the high school level, who knows for sure, but it would definitely involve coaching.
All right, Coach Dan, before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you, your website, your book, your YouTube page. Go ahead and plug it all here so people can follow you and your wife and Euclid and see the amazing things that y'all are doing.
JourneyMyMotherSon.com or DanClouser.com. A lot of times that's just easier. They both go to the exact same site. Everything that you need to know is on that site. So whether you're looking to buy one of the books, there's links there for that, both, signed copies of the books, or it'll direct you to Amazon for an unsigned copy. Speaking engagements, consulting engagements, all of my podcasts are there. gets you to the YouTube channel as well, because my podcasts go out on, audio only and video. So really just get to that site. All my blogs are there, and you can, probably spend a couple hours just digging around on it and finding more about this journey for sure.
Well, thank you, Dan, for coming on. It was amazing. You have an amazing story. Your mom clearly did some great things and is an American folk hero. Shout out to your wife, because I know how it is to be married, and, you got to have both people on board to really do some things like this. So shout out to your wife as well. And shout out to Euclid and the Red Sox. Well, guys, thank you for coming along for the ride with me and Dan Clouser. Make sure you guys go check him out on social media, check out his YouTube page, get his book. And signing off for Dan, I'm Tony Rambles, your host of the Living Numbers podcast. Make sure you guys go like, subscribe, download all that great stuff, streaming on YouTube. Y'all know you can find me everywhere. And I will see you all in the next ramble.